So a very good afternoon to all of our participants and our panelists on this, final day of our AISS, but nonetheless a very important session which is we're about to, start. The session is hybrid workforce, the risk scenarios, realities, and mitigation around it, because this is the time where hybrid workforce is of a pivotal importance. So I'm really delighted to announce the panelists that we have today with us is Mr. Bitul Bhardwaj. He's Group CISO from GMR Group. Miss Babita BP. She is CISO of CSB, that is Catholic Syrian Bank. Miss Srinidhi Savachandam. She's Director, Chief Information Security Office India, UBS at Pune. Mr. Pramod Khanna, Regional Sales Director, India and SARC from BlackBerry, and Mr. Karthik Shinde, Partner Cybersecurity with Ernst and Young. So, without taking too much time, I request Bitul ji to take the session and start the discussions. I'm really looking forward for this important discussions. Thank you. Good afternoon to all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deepak. And first of all, thanks to DSCI for organizing this wonderful conference. You picked up a very pertinent and a very important topic in today's context, which is your hybrid workforce. And as a panel, we will dwell into understanding what risk scenarios, what realities, and what mitigation strategies we should be adopting as industry, as security leaders. And again, thank you for putting a team of a wonderful and eminent panelists today. Karthik coming in from his extensive consulting background. We have Pramodji coming in from his extensive OEM or the product background. We have Srinidhi and Babita who's coming in from the BFSI sector. And as we all know, BFSI is leading, financial sector is leading in terms of adopting security practices. Pramodji, if you can put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. So, just to set a quick context before we go dwell into the questions here, uh, last 2 years we have seen a significant transformation in the digital space, and specifically in the cybersecurity space. A lot of things have changed in terms of how we have been monitoring, how we have been governing, how we have been architecting our organizations, right from the access management to the exception management. Because fundamentally, our workforce has shifted away from our perimeter, so no longer the traditional perimeter approach is holding the fort with the workforce all over the place. It has called in for a lot of changes which has already happened. But again, it is not over with the accelerated digital transformation, cybersecurity transformation in the organizations. We will today try to get into specifics of, well, what we can learn from our panelists today. So with that, I will try to first understand, and let's try to define or attempt to define what hybrid workforce is all about and what risks are there in that space. So I'll start with you, Srinidhi, in terms of based on your experience in the BFSI sector, right? What do you think are the top 2 or 3 personas where in your hybrid workforce where you consider that they are high risk, and why do you consider them to be high risk? So let's start with that
Absolutely.
definition of hybrid.
I'm happy to, let you know what we think from a BFSI sector standpoint, right? To me, to be honest, is always people. People, as much as they're important to an organization, as much as they bring about a huge value without which no business runs, they also come with a lot of risk. Now, I'll give you some very simple examples to, what we've been seeing in the whole pandemic phase, with the introduction of hybrid workforce model, which was previously again called remote working model, right? Now, most people, are, or let's put it this way, people do have difficulties with identifying, okay, what is a malicious email? What emails can compromise the system's integrity? What emails can compromise data's integrity? Versus what emails are classified as good emails, right? Or what activity can really not compromise the system's data. People, which is why people to me are the most high risk personas, followed by procedures, best practices, which again is key to ensure people are really adhering to what is right and what is wrong. So, as from a CISO standpoint, from an information security standpoint, there would definitely be people and practices. That'll be my two top high risk personas. Bitter, we cannot hear you.
Actually, you're on mute.
Sorry for that.
No
So thank
problem.
you for that, Srinidhi. And I'll ask the same question to Babita now. What are the top two or three personas in your uh, experience and your organization which you consider to be high risk and why?
Yeah, thank you, Vital, for the question. See, the pandemic has caused a tectonic shift in our life as well as in our work. And when we talk about the hybrid workforce, we are completely relying on cloud technologies and remote connectivity tools. Now, if we see the analysis of cyber attacks on cloud services, it has gone to almost 600 percentage, and the hackers are now even trying to continuing exploiting the vulnerabilities in the VPN gateways. And when we see the analysis, we can see that the brute force attack, it has increased to around 377.5 million brute force attack is happening as per the standard published in February 2021, which is when compared to the last year is only 93 million. So this is the way how the world is moving now. And when we talk about the challenges, is of course as quoted by Srinidhi, the security culture in the organization is fading because the people is working from home. When we are in the company, we will be putting certain rules and regulations which they have to obey. When they are at home, they need not follow it. If it's a BYOD kind of thing, the visibility or the security posture of the endpoint is totally not available. And when it is the perimeter address, we can say that we know the security posture of the endpoint. And weak Wi-Fi security, unpatched system, shadow IT, all these are the major concerns when it comes to from the CISO perspective. And home distractions, what Sridhiti has told, like home distraction is one of the main cause for security errors, where the people can click on some phishing mails, which can lead to a data breach or even the loss of reputation for the company. So, of course, human is one of the major security threat, whether it is in a hybrid or the other model also. And another challenge which I would like to highlight is the trusting on third party tools. We don't know whether the vulnerability exists in the solution or not. Log4j, we talks about it every day nowadays, which is considered the deadliest vulnerability, which can launch a zero-day attack. So we don't know what kind of security is there in the tool which is being delivered to us. We are totally relying on a third-party tool. So these are the some of the concerns as a CISO I feel when it comes to even from the hybrid work model and even otherwise also, because now we are depending totally on technology. So that, of course, we have to take it to the next level to secure our systems.
No, thank you, Babita. Before I take it to Karthik and to Pramoji, just a quick announcement for all the audience here. We have published certain polls, so we want to keep this session interactive. So please do take a chance, time to respond to those polls. There are 4 or 5 questions which would help us understand what you're seeing in your organizations. So coming back to the question again, so what Babita and Srinidhi had articulated fundamentally is that the people who are working from home has increased the attack surface for the organizations. There is a cultural aspect which comes into the play with that. But if I extend that from a little different perspective, Karthik, from your standpoint, from the promote your standpoint, because you are at a vantage point where you see what the different industries, what different companies are seeing. So, what do you think is the pain point which industry is feeling right now, right? And let's also expand that question and let's say, well, not just from a hybrid standpoint, but what are they struggling with when it comes to cybersecurity in the context of hybrid workforce, please. So, Karthik, over to you, and then we'll ask Pramoji for the same thing.
Sure, sure. But also, I think, flashback 2 years and when all of this started, and it dawned upon organizations that there is no way but to switch to a remote, working kind of scenario. I think it was a blessing in disguise for the digital revolution in India to happen. But I think it came with its own challenges. And I recollect, when we were advising clients, I think there were a number of queries that were pouring in, right from issuance of laptops, and Srinidhi, you might relate to this, in a banking captives. I think that was a huge challenge in terms of sending people the laptops and things like that. To suddenly handling a remote workforce and configuring and reconfiguring your firewalls, IDSs to accept those new IP addresses and connections, and then start to worry about how your third parties will now connect, right? And then at the same time, when all of this was happening, we came across the whole SolarWinds breach, which kind of multiplied the whole threat landscape, and it gave a new dimension to the attack vector, and it got everyone worried. But I think things fell into place. But I think as we've come through this whole pandemic, and people have now started coming back to office, etc. And on a lighter note, there are now even more challenges that the broadband at home was working fine, but the broadband at office is now slower. So I'll just stop there and pass to Pramod.
No, I think before Pramoji come and chip in there, yeah, so you got used to 100 Mbps uninterrupted, now dedicated for you at home, and then you're back in office. It's divide by whatever number. So
I know.
understand the pain there. Pramoji, over to you from your perspective, because you're coming from a product and OEM standpoint, right? What are you seeing the companies struggling with today in the context of hybrid workforce?
Yeah, thank you, Bittal, and good afternoon to all the panelists and all the attendees who have joined in for this wonderful session. As the people prior to me they talked about, I think it's all about the people, process, and technology, which is important in terms of the trending challenges that we are seeing. But however, when we see the companies uh, over the previous years, we have seen companies implementing security solutions where the focus was to secure the data center and the perimeter, actually protecting their crown jewels. But today, with the hybrid workforce, the perimeter has basically completely dissolved. And we are seeing the increasing volume and variety of endpoints. The endpoints are today just not limited to your desktops and laptops. We have people using mobile devices. We have people using wearables. We have people using all kinds of IoT devices and cloud connected devices, which are there in between. So the impact is, and the cost of providing security and connectivity for the IT teams within the organization has gone up tremendously. We are seeing organizations are struggling to actually cope up with the rising number of the security vendors, because I mean there are so many security vendors that we see today. Each has got their own tools, each has got their own consoles, they have their own threats, they have their own defense mechanisms, and not to mention the lack of cybersecurity awareness, which Srinidhi actually talked about amongst the employees and the workforce that we are seeing. And another big disadvantage is the shortage of skills in the cybersecurity space. It's people are investing in technology, but there is a lack of skills to actually run
Pramoji, we are losing you. We can't hear you.
I think we lost him, Vital.
Yeah. I think what we basically got a gist of what he was trying to say, and while he reconnects, so what we've heard or understood of the hybrid, what is hybrid workforce and what risk exists today, I think it's pretty clear. The number one key concern remains people who are working remotely, uh, and that has number one increased the attack surface to the distractions are way too much, which is posing a risk. The cultural aspects comes into the play. And what we heard from Promoji also is that there are far too many products out there in the market. So the key question is for the organizations, which one should I go for? So that's how I would think about how it has been defined from a hybrid standpoint. So let's just proceed in our conversation while he comes back in. So let's understand, well, how do you go about securing the hybrid workforce? Okay. And while there are a lot of hygiene things which needs to go in, but let's go around the table and understand what are the must haves and what are the good to haves, right? As a security leader, which would secure this hybrid workforce for you. Let's start with those, and then based on what we hear, we will go and do a deep dive into one or two of them. So why don't we start with you, Srinadi?
Absolutely. So, one of the key things, of course, to really help us keep our system secure, keep our environment secure in this whole hybrid workforce, and even in general, even if we're not really in the hybrid workforce model, right? The most important is, and something I absolutely advocate for, is least access model. And this is very prominent because you do not want HPUs, for instance, with PUs, high privileged users, to privileged users, to regular users that need to be using the system for a certain reason, all having access to the same data intent, because the segregation plays a very important role in keeping the system secure. So I always suggest, okay, keep the access to as minimum as possible, keep it to as and when it's required. Need to know principle needs to be there too. And most importantly, ensure any production access, infrastructure access is well cut off, and there's no standing access given to these environments on a regular basis, or people do not forget to, let's say, monitor these access or log these access, and so on and so forth. So one of the primary things I'd really like to focus on is the least principal access, or least access principle. Now, the other aspect to it, and we must have definitely heard about it, and a lot of organizations are also trying to bring this on board, as a zero trust model or zero trust solution. Now, this plays, I mean, very similar. I think it's an evolution of the whole least access model, right? Absolutely, to not trust any networks, to not trust, architectures that we really cannot rely on, to fully, constantly authorize and authenticate users. Now, this is another way forward to really curb issues that we're really running into from a hybrid workforce model. So this would be my take on, a few ways to really secure the whole hybrid workforce.
So your vote and fundamentally goes for the least access principle should be adopted for the workforce, no matter whether they are remote or wherever
Absolutely.
they are. Okay, so
Absolutely.
understood. Uh, let's move on to you, Babita, and let's take your pick. If you can, if you want to give more than one, that's okay as well. If you want
Yeah,
to give
see,
the must have and the good to have, that's okay as well.
yeah. See, I agree with Srinidhi for the zero trust architecture, wherein the organization should not automatically trust anything inside or outside its perimeter. Instead, we have to verify each and everything, and before we are granting access to it. So that is the primary requirement which is required now, wherein the world is moving towards zero-day attacks. And in such scenario, if we are able to refine to a zero trust architecture, I think most of the things can be handled. And the second thing is, of course, is the transformative security education to the employees. And when it comes to bank, we have to deal to the customers also. So awareness is what is very much required, and for that we have to do some simulation exercise to develop the memory and the instinctive behavior of the employees. And even we have to think about AI based or see, we are in a scenario wherein we can be attacked any point of time. So we should have a highly responsive system in place where we can detect at a right point of time. So incident response creation is also very much required for the time being. So these are the some of the takeaways which I would suggest.
Thank you for that, Babita. So you've added a new dimension to the zero trust or least access, which is the incident detection at the endpoint for the remote workforce is equally important for you. Okay. Let's move on to you, Karthik.
Yeah. So I think when we say a hybrid workforce, I think the organization, like Pramod mentioned some time back, it's becoming borderless, perimeterless, and we have and organizations have moved on to cloud. There are third parties, fourth parties which have access to the organization's network, and it's not just remote workforce that's remote, right? You have your third and fourth parties as well. So that really, while that really defines hybrid workforce, now how do you really go about creating or defining principles like zero trust? I mean, it's not a technology like Srinidhi said. It's a concept, it's a framework, it's a mindset that needs to be inculcated in the organization. And I think, as a start point, like you inventorize your IT assets, I think it's very important to inventorize what are those elements which will abide by the principles of least privilege, the principles of defense in depth, and so on and so forth. And when I say inventorize, look at all elements, not just your IT assets, which will include people where are and the hybrid workforce, your third parties, your cloud service providers, your SaaS providers, all of them. And once you have a map, you can then define a well thought through strategy of which product will fit where, which technology will fit where. And that's how I would at least, do that way. But that's my short view on
Yeah.
that, Vital.
So I think the new dimension you have added, Karthik, is that a good inventory of where your data, your assets, and information is sitting, be it third party, fourth party, whatever party it is, but we need to have a good inventory. So before I go to Pramod, what do you suggest? And this is, let's say, this is something which every CISO wants to have, because in the end, the security is all about having the visibility to what you own as an organization. And
Correct.
if you don't have that, uh, you're fundamentally dealing with people, right? You're dealing with an organizations which are multi-tiered. So having a good inventory of what you have as an organization is always a challenge, and there's an element of discovery which needs to come in. So, any experiences, Karthik, would you like to share from the discovery elements of building a perfect inventory? I know it's a little digression from the core topic, but it's important enough topic because you need to know who is where and what is where.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think, and I think the buzzword and the keyword like zero trust, which the industry is using these days, is observability. So your IT observability, your cyber observability, whatever you want to call it, it's actually getting a live map of where your information is going from an endpoint to your central backbone or servers or the cloud. And doing so, it could be a platform or it could be a manual exercise. But I think there are startups which have come into this space, which are very unique and interesting products where you could do an auto discovery of sorts and map your entire assets to the backbone, third parties, fourth parties, and really kind of chalk out that map of sorts. So if we would have used a network scanner like Nmap, there was a feature where you could actually see a map of sorts of the ping scan that you did, right? So this will create a kind of a network map of sorts, and not just that, but it will also give you 2 3 levels down into saying which user has access to what data, and what database and data elements that it has access to, and create a sort of a live blueprint of your network of sorts, which will kind of give you a fair confidence that where is my information residing and who is doing what in that sense.
I think my key takeaway from your response, Karthik, is that be a little experimental and give a chance to startups because it's been a fundamental problem, been there for long enough. And with AI and ML and the new capabilities we have, let's just give chance to startups and see what are the new approaches because we know the old approaches has not been able to give us what we have been searching for all this while. So with that, let me go to Pramod. The same question for you. What are your must-haves and good-to-haves to secure a hybrid workforce?
Yeah. So I like what we were talking earlier. So it's all about the environment, the cybersecurity that has been pushed, and a lot of users today. What we see today are kind of frustrated. The actual users are being frustrated. Why they are frustrated? Because of the multiple authentication processes they have to go through. There are clunky update, frequent patch updates. There are clunky interfaces. There are endless alerts which are coming in due to the ineffective security based signature based security measures which have been put in place by the organizations. And as a result, the even the scheduled scans and the AV scans which are being done on a scheduled way are actually bringing the system to a complete hang at times. And these are like factors of irritations for the users, and these have led people to use security workarounds and shadow IT, what some of the panelists talked about. So this has been a big challenge that I see most of the security organizations has been facing, and they have been the panel also seems to agree with it. Now, while the intention is to simplify, provide a good user experience, and enhance productivity, but with the right technology and controls, and it can be achieved. We are seeing data breaches that is happening, and these data breaches can be harmful. It can even be disastrous to organizations. And there's a growing number of ransomware attacks, vulnerability, and breaches which are getting reported, and this keeps on growing year on year. And the whole pandemic has actually exacerbated all these challenges and has actually revealed a lot of gaps in the organization preparedness for remote and hybrid workforce. So these are the challenges that the organizations are seeing today, and they need to actually come up with measures, tools, processes, awareness of the people, making the people aware to overcome these challenges.
Got it. So okay. So you fundamentally saying that today, as a security leader, you need to have a quiver of arrows, or in your arsenal, you need to have multiple tools to be able to secure end user, be it from a DLP standpoint, or be it from the patching standpoint, or the policy standpoint, or from a AB or a EDR standpoint. So you're saying that all of that needs to be simplified in an organization, because you don't want end user to be bogged down with what a CISO wants. So simplify and unify the security components is what I think you were talking about. So I think we heard very interesting perspectives today, and thankfully, all the panelists did not touch on the very basics like MFA and then those things, because we've heard that, we know that. I think very four interesting takeaways, at least for me as a CISO, is well, focus on the least access principles. Go back to that. It all started with that. So go back to that. Build the good capability around the incident detection for your remote workforce. Third, inventorize what do you have as an organization. Uh, I think what Karthik was saying, that well, a lot of stuff is right now in the cloud, multiple places. You need to be having a visibility into where do you have what. And the fourth, simplify, unify the technologies and the tool set which end user really experiences, and what you require as a security leader to secure that particular remote persona. I think that was a good response. Thank you everyone for that. Moving on, one common theme, which from the last question, was the zero-day trust, also zero-day principles, right? We heard that from Srinidhi, we heard that from Babita, we heard that from Karthik. Pramod, you were alluding towards that, but didn't call it out specifically. So let's talk about zero-day for a moment here. And that's a question for you, Karthik. Okay. Now, is zero trust all-encompassing approach that requires complete organization security posture transformation, or can it be an incremental journey for an organization? Because it's been the buzzword for past couple of years. If I remember correctly, I saw in one of the Gartner's report, which was released recently, which predicts the future. It said that 30% of the organizations will be having zero trust by 2026 or something like that. So everyone seems to be talking about 0 day. So Karthik, over to you. Very simply put again, does it require a complete organization transformation, or can I take an incremental step in doing so?
Yeah, interesting question, Vital. And I think whenever a body, an independent body releases a report around a particular concept like zero trust, it becomes an industry buzzword, and everyone catches on to it, right? And then as a CISO, I'm sure Babita and Srinidhi, ma'am, and Vital, you as well, you must have been bogged down by what are those, everyone claims that they can do zero trust, right? And sometimes we think that getting a product will really up my zero trust game or make me zero trust enabled. So zero trust in plain and simple English is trust no one, right? And trust no one, and like Srini said earlier, just harping on the point of least privilege. And if we really look at how do we achieve that, and I think organizations have been taking measures to make sure that principles of least privilege, defense in depth are taken care of. But unfortunately, the complexity of the technology landscape keeps changing so rapidly that it's very difficult to catch up with abiding to these principles, right? Hence, and like I said earlier, where you need to do some homework around what's there currently in your organization, and how do I really implement a zero trust kind of a model. Then it's very critical to look at what needs to be done. So, for example, if one of your employees gets a phishing link through a mobile phone, which is also part of your office network now, right? And clicks on the link, and the phone is compromised. Let's say a malware got introduced to the phone. Now, the point of entry becomes the mobile phone, right? Now, if you had a good MDM kind of a implementation within the organization, then the MDM would have cut the mobile device connection to the corporate network, right? So that's level one. Level two would be, but the credentials are still compromised, right? So the attacker can now log in through a web-enabled, laptop, which gives the same access to your organization, right? But will those credentials work here? And that's when your user entity behavior and contextualization of security comes into play, where your MDM has then flagged off that the device is compromised. So look at the contextual aspects of the user, where it's connecting from, which device, and so on and so forth, which country, etc., right? And when that happens, the access is closed. So in this scenario, what has really happened is the compromise has already happened, and the principle of zero trust is also one of the principles, is apart from least privilege, is assumed breach, right? So you assume that the employee is going to get breached, the organization is going to get breached in some way or the other. How do you limit the breach, right? How do you then implement sort of a defense in depth so that the damage is lesser? And obviously after that, your incident response, detection, etc., will come in place to detect where the attack is happening, and so on and so forth. But that's my quick view, Bital, on zero trust.
And the way I was hearing your response, Karthik, was that keep an eye on the opportunities. Uh, as the different tech stack, different solutions you have in the organization come for renewal or end of life, keep an eye on the new capabilities which are fundamentally on the zero trust model, right? And then incrementally go about building an organization which is which is leaning towards more of a zero trust model. So keep an eye. So it's not a one all-encompassing transformative journey unless you have really deep pockets. But uh, so it's much easier for a new organization to be a zero trust adopted strategy from day one itself. But for the legacy organizations, keep an eye on the opportunities. That's my takeaway. What you said, Pramoji, from a hybrid workforce standpoint, can you please articulate your zero trust principles in that context, please?
Yeah, thanks, Bittal. So, what Karthik said is actually true, and I'm a lot of industry solutions are today there in the picture to provide that kind of contextual analysis and help the organization stay ahead of the breach and have the alerts and everything. But today, when while zero trust has become a buzzword in the cybersecurity industry, but what's more important is the value of zero trust basically comes when you have a zero touch. So zero trust coupled with zero trust for the users and employees basically gives the best balanced user experience. What I mean by zero touch is like we have multiple authentication processes, two-factor authentications, and multiple excessive security hurdles, which basically becomes a kind of a inconvenience for users. And as such, they try to circumvent the system and render it useless. So, striking a balance between a continuous threat protection, which zero trust actually provides, it does a continuous authentication, and having a balance with user productivity is basically the key. So when we have a zero touch solution provide a path to zero touch, organizations get the best of both the worlds: security they can trust to defend against emerging cyber attacks or cyber threats, and a positive user experience that actually fosters productivity through this mechanism. So a true transparent and frictionless authentication process and a zero trust environment that gives a user a good experience, because at the end of the day what we all want is that the users should have a good experience, and the security systems and everything should be there in place.
You introduced zero touch today, and I'm very sure it's very pandemic inspired terminology. Uh, but I think I know where you are alluding towards, right? You're going towards a very different approach when it comes to how do you secure your remote personas, your workforce. You're talking about some unified approach there. So we'll come back to that particular unified approach, or I call it silver bullet, in a moment. But for now, if I go over to you, Srinidhi and Babita, uh, you heard from Karthik and you heard from Pramod as well about the zero trust adoption in the organizations. But as a CISOs, right, what practical on the ground challenges do you see in adopting it? While it's good to be open to look for opportunities, but what do you see on the ground where the pain points are from adopting it?
One of the key pain points that I actually see with the adoption of zero trust, as much as I'm an advocate of any evolving technologies to keep our systems secure, we always run into this issue of legacy systems. Legacy systems, I mean, obviously, none of our, let me put it this way, most of our organizations don't really start greenfield. Now, with that, of course, we left with a lot of legacy systems that are not compatible with the advancing technology or evolving technology. So, whatever Zero Trust decides to bring in, right? Constant authorization, authentication, endpoint controls, encryption. We always have to go back and assess, are our systems, especially the legacy systems, are they compatible with what we're trying to, bring forward from a security standpoint? Now, this this is one of the pain points that we usually run into with any introduction of new technology, any new introduction of evolving security, right? Legacy systems are always a problem. Now, the other aspect that, I mean, I've also heard these debates go on between different groups. One of them, obviously, is technical debt. Now, and then technical debt is not just limited to zero trust or not just limited to a hybrid workforce model, right? It comes with any end of life. For instance, on any system, and then you migrate over to a new technology, you always have technical debts that you run into. So these are two primary issues. But my initial, let me put it this way, my key issue that I've seen on the ground is legacy systems and getting them to be compatible with evolving security. That's one of the key challenges.
I completely agree with you. That is, and the compatibility. And for a moment, so coming in from an industrial background, I can tell you that with Windows XP, Windows 7 being out of life, out of support, well, those are perfectly working fine controllers. It's difficult to convince the business teams that why it's not required, and that is a state of affairs in most of the industrial companies around the world. Legacy systems compatibility, I think, very important. I would say on the ground challenge faced by all the organizations. If you're industrial, even more so. Babita, over to you for your perspective on the same question.
When we are talking about zero trust, as mentioned by Karthik, Pramod, and Srinidhi, and yourself also, see, zero trust is not mentioned about a particular solution. It is a it is a framework. So it is a multiple solution, and how we are configuring that solution to grant access what matters in zero trust. So that is the main challenge, and the right skill set of using a particular solution is also another challenge which we see when we go for implementation of it. Just imagine we have purchased, or our organization is having a next gen firewall, and while configuring that, if we have put any access and we are not providing a restricted access to a particular IP or anything, then there is no point in saying that I'm having a next gen firewall. So obviously it is how we are making use of the technology, how we are refining it and configuring it to provide the least access, that matters. So that should be across all the solutions, and it should be a kind of culture that need to be built, security culture that need to be built among the within the organization and towards the employees also, who for building the zero trust. And as rightly mentioned, we can do it in a stepped manner only, right? It's all of a sudden we cannot move directly to a zero trust architecture, because it will lead to a lot of issues, and I don't think it will give a full coverage of the solution also. So that is one thing. And when we are going for, as rightly mentioned by Srinidhi, in old architecture methodology security, what we have done is by default we give grant access and we restrict only the blacklisted thing or unwanted access only. That thing have to be changed when it comes to zero trust. By default, we have to restrict everything and only provide access to who the actual or the authorized users. So that change from the legacy security posture to the current also will take some time, which will lead to some kind of apprehensions among the users who are getting access, free access right now. And when we are suddenly going to them and telling that no, this is not, we cannot provide this, so obviously business teams and other people might come to the CISO asking for why yesterday I was getting this access, why you are not giving this. So that also, for that also, we have to make them understand why we are doing is what is the importance of security, how we the brand name of the company can be lost with just a click or some malicious downloads which has happened in the system. So an awareness program is also a bundle part which comes with the zero trust architecture. Without that, I don't think this can even be implemented. So these are the some of the basic challenges which we face when we go for implementation of zero trust architecture.
Thank you for that, Babita. We're running short of time here. We just got a one more minute to go. Uh, Parmoji, if you can summarize in 30 seconds, I do want to hear from you about the unified approach you were talking about. If you can do that in 30 seconds, I would need 30 seconds to conclude my takeaways from this session. Over to you, Pamuji, for 30-second brief on what you were thinking about unified approach.
Yeah, thank you, Bittal. So today, as we all discussed, the need for the organizations is basically a unified architecture. People have been using legacy antivirus, people have been using EDR technologies, people have been using multiple things, different solutions, different console. There's Yuba, which has come into the picture, which is giving you all the contextual zero trust availability. But until unless all these alerts which are coming in, they get integrated to an XDR platform, and wherein you have a far greater visibility, it is not making sense. So organizations basically need to look at how to get out of the silos and have an integrated approach, look at solutions which can integrate everything into one and offer the complete picture. I understand not possible for one vendor to provide the complete security for all on all aspects, but defense in depth is today becoming kind of defense in depth. So people are spending a lot of money to build up defense in depth. It is actually expense in depth. The usage, the contextual knowledge, the alerts which comes in, basically lying unused. They are of no value to the organization, and we still see breaches happening. We still see ransomware attacks happening because of all these technologies working in silos.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah, that's
Pamuji. I
it.
think that is a good explanation there about the unified approach. Let me just quickly summarize my takeaways, what I'm taking away from this session. Uh, on the fun side, I heard two new things from Pamoji. You were on the steroids today. Expense in depth, zero touch. So that's on the lighter side. But on the serious note, I think I learned that for securing a hybrid workforce, you have to talk about, you have to look at the least access privilege principle. Go back to the fundamentals there. Build, focus on your detection capabilities. Third, inventorize uh, and know where your assets and where your data information is lying. Fourth, simplify, unify, integrated approach is what is required today. And fifth, be mindful that legacy systems compatibility will slow you down. So, those were the five key takeaways from the discussion we had today. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you so much for your valuable insights shared with us, and thanks to the platform for giving us a opportunity to discuss on this important topic today. With that, thanks to the audience for listening to us. Take care.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Take
Yeah,
you.
care.
bye bye.
Thank you.